everyone, welcome to Life Embracing. It's Wednesday today. This week we're discussing eating disorder urges and how to deal with them. I found that with an eating disorder urge, the main thing to do is to find out when it's going to be triggered, and a lot of the time you can know ahead in advance that something might trigger you off, and if you think back to what you were feeling and what was happening at the time that you were triggered into one of the eating disorder behaviours. All the food situations, for me, they were definitely guaranteed triggers. So for me, the main thing was to find out a way to distract myself after these times and have a plan set up for when the urges would kick in. There are so many things that you can do to try and distract yourself. Do something that uses your energy, that is productive, that isn't obsessive. I always found that walking really helped. If I was very stressed and really anxious, then going for a walk in a beautiful scenery, in a park, by a lake, it took my mind off things and it allowed me to exhaust some of that energy that was building up inside of me. I had to be careful that I wasn't using it as an excuse to exercise and burn calories. So I always made sure that I'd planned to go for a walk with a friend or my parents after a meal so that it could be contained and that I could enjoy the walk for what was meant to be just a beautiful walk in lovely surroundings. I always found that doing art really helped me because it takes up so much of your focus that you can't even think about anything else, and by the time that you've created something, hours and hours have passed by and you didn't even realise. I found that writing poetry helped because it expressed my feelings at the same time as giving me a distraction, having something in my hand and doing something. My dogs were always a really great distraction because, you know, I could take them for walks if I felt really anxious. Just spending time with them and giving them cuddles and playing with them. Go and watch your favourite movie, your favourite series. Go watch television, Sky, whatever you have. It's a great way to relax, allowing yourself to sit down. Sometimes I was really anxious, and usually if I was triggered into an eating disorder behaviour, it also meant that I was very overwhelmed and tired, and so I found that sometimes sleeping helped to clear my head and settle things down, get me out of the situation. Do some gardening, go and play in the park, let your inner child out. Read a book, or preferably a book that's got like a whole series so that when you finish that book you can read another book and another book and another book. I love reading, and that is a great way for me to relax and just completely involve myself in the story, and I completely forget where I am and I just go straight into the story. So I love reading and I find that a great distraction. Talking about it always helps as well because it reduces the anxiety around the situation, and if the anxiety is reduced, the trigger is usually reduced, and so that urge isn't there. So I always found it really helpful to talk to somebody who knew what I was going through and could sympathise and was understanding. And also, if you have a backup plan in place and have thought about things that you might do together, if you're finding that you have the urge to go and do something negative, it's really useful to have a friend that understands and is able to come and say, well, let's do this then, and you know, this usually helps, why don't we go and do this? I used to find it helpful to write myself notes when I was in a positive frame of mind, reminding myself of why I wanted recovery and reminding myself that even though I was feeling these really negative urges, that there were alternatives and that I could go and do other things rather than to carry on with the route that I was taking. And I would put these notes on my gym clothes to remind myself, if I was having the urge to exercise and I went to find my gym clothes, I would have a note there that would make me pause for a second. It might not get rid of the urge completely and I might still go to the gym, but I might be gentler on myself that day, and it might just make me think just that tiny little bit. I would put a note saying, you don't need to do that. You don't need to weigh yourself today. The number on the scale isn't representative of your value in the world. And that, you know, a lot of the times they didn't make any difference at all, and I still go ahead and do that behaviour anyway. But sometimes it made me think twice, and sometimes it helped. Sometimes it helped change my thinking enough so that I didn't spiral too much out of control and I didn't hurt myself too much. We all have a choice, and we can either choose a route that will ultimately end in unhappiness, or we can choose a choice that is fulfilling to our souls and our hearts, and that gives us life. Make a journal and fill it with things that inspire you. Fill it with things that make you happy. Just fill this album with things that make you want to live life to the full and want to recover and want to be well and be healthy enough to enjoy everything that you enjoy doing. And then when you have an urge to engage in a negative behaviour, go and look through that journal so that you can see what you have to fight for, and maybe it'll help change your thinking for that day, or that hour, or that minute. Every single second, it counts. A lot of the time I used to think, I've skipped breakfast, I might as well restrict for the rest of the day now, the whole day is ruined. That's very typical eating disorder behaviour thinking. It's very black and white, and what helped me is learning that just because I skip breakfast doesn't mean that the rest of the day is ruined. Don't take it in days. There's a whole grey area, there's whole minutes and there's whole seconds. Just because that 5 minutes of breakfast you weren't able to be positive and you weren't able to control the eating disorder doesn't mean that the next 5 minutes can't be positive. And instead of counting up the days and saying, well, that whole day's ruined, that was all eating disorder controlled, I'd say, well, 5 minutes of that day I was actually feeling really positive. That minute I was able to control that thought and I didn't act on it. And just count up the seconds, count up the minutes that are positive and treasure them. Write them down, because eventually they'll get more and more and more, and they'll overtake the negative ones. I'll see everyone next week.